domestically, the Biden administration really needs this to get done, right? Just how badly?
Yeah, so we understand there's a fresh proposal that was on the table in recent days. They continue to say this is really up to Hamas to really agree to this. And this is crucial for Biden because he really needs this conflict to de-escalate, particularly as we're seeing these protests across the country now in more than 30 states, as our data team has been tracking very well now. And it's anti-protests or anti-Israel protests, but it's also a huge frustration with President Biden. They feel like he could do more to alleviate human suffering in Gaza. And potentially these are young voters who could be crucial to Biden's reelection campaign. He really needs to retain their support if he wants to win in November.
Voters who were already wary about the policy in Israel and Gaza. This came up today in the White House press briefing in which Press Secretary Karine Jean-Pierre reacted to the forceful removal of student protesters at Columbia University. That took place last night after they barricaded themselves inside a hall on campus. Here she is.
Top line here, every American has the right to peacefully protest within the law. That is something that we believe. Seizing buildings, taking over buildings is not peacefully protesting. Students have the right to attend class and feel safe and feel like they are in a safe campus environment. That's what we want to see.
Akayla, this is a fine line this president is walking. Some of his critics, Republicans, are calling for him to show up on campus, a place like Columbia. The White House today says he'll speak at a Holocaust memorial event next week. Is that the venue for him to deliver this message?
Yeah, well, the White House and the president has really condemned anti-Semitic rhetoric that we have seen in some of these protests. He was asked about this directly in Virginia last week, if he condemned some of these protests, and he said he condemns the anti-Semitic rhetoric, but he also condemns people who don't understand what's going on in Palestine. So he's really walking a really delicate balance here to be able to, in some ways, please two different coalitions that are both really critical to his election.
Well, we'll be watching that speech closely next week. Akayla Gardner, thank you so much, covering the White House for Bloomberg. As expected, meantime, the Federal Reserve leaving interest rates unchanged today. Here's Fed Chair Jay Powell in his news conference earlier.
I think it's unlikely that the next policy rate move will be a hike. I'd say it's unlikely. You know, our policy focus is really what I just mentioned, which is how long to keep policy restrictive. You ask, what would it take? You know, I think we'd need to see persuasive evidence that our policy stance is not sufficiently restrictive to bring inflation sustainably down to 2% over time. That's not what we think we're seeing, as I mentioned. But that's something like that is what it would take. We'd look at the totality of the data.
You saw the news conference and you heard it live here on Bloomberg TV and radio, and Bloomberg's Michael McKee was in the room for that. He's with us now at the table on Balance of Power. It's great to see you, Michael. A lack of further progress, not exactly what the markets wanted to hear. The changes in the statement, we should know what about?
Well, basically, they just acknowledged reality by saying that we have not seen the same kind of progress in the last couple of months. And that's just telling people that we see the same thing that you do, and that you're probably, it's read between the lines, you're probably not wrong to put off rate cuts and to think we might not do 3 this year. And then Powell backed that up when he gave his press conference.
Well, and he was asked a number of things in that press conference, including how, if at all, the Fed is thinking about politics and the context around which, if we're talking about fall rate cuts, for example, something in September, right before an election, he effectively said, that's not how we think about things. But really, Mike?
It's not. And he was right to say, go back and look at the transcripts. This is his 4th presidential election since coming on the Fed, and they don't talk about it. It's just an external factor that doesn't affect what they do. And that's been the Fed all the way through, except for the chairmanship of Arthur Burns in Richard Nixon's day, and nobody wants to be the next Arthur Burns. So they keep politics well out of it. I was a little surprised today that nobody asked about the Wall Street Journal story about Donald Trump advisors trying to find a way to sideline Jay Powell and basically take over the Fed. I'm not sure he would have had an answer for it. He probably would dodge it. But it was interesting that he wasn't asked.
Indeed. Maybe you'll ask that question next time. It's worth noting that even the Treasury Secretary and a former Fed chair herself, Janet Yellen, was talking about the idea of Fed independence today. Bloomberg's Michael McKee, always great to see you here in Washington. Thank you so much. Elsewhere on Capitol Hill, Republican Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene of Georgia says she'll be moving ahead with her motion to vacate House Speaker Mike Johnson next week.
I think every member of Congress needs to take that vote and let the chips fall where they may. And so next week, I am going to be calling this motion to vacate. Absolutely calling it. I can't wait to see Democrats go out and support a Republican speaker.
Let's go now to Zack Cohen, who covers Congress for Bloomberg Government. So, Zack, is this just a scenario in which Marjorie Taylor Greene is unable to back down?
This does seem like the last gasp of Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene's efforts to punish Speaker Mike Johnson for his decision to put on the House floor this $95 billion package for Ukraine, Taiwan, Israel that she had been opposing for a long time. The problem is the votes just simply aren't there to actually oust Johnson from the speakership. Democrats have said that they would vote to table this motion to vacate, essentially giving the votes on a procedural vote to avoid even a final vote on vacating the chair from happening. This is very different than how they treated Speaker McCarthy when Kevin McCarthy from California, when he was in that job last year, where they actually did vote with Republicans that ultimately led to his ouster. And so clearly the votes are not there for Greene. You do have two other Republicans, Thomas Massie from Kentucky, as well as Paul Gosar from Arizona, who have said in the past that they would vote to oust Johnson if given the chance. But if that procedural vote does in fact succeed and Greene's motion is sidelined, then Johnson appears to be safe, at least for the next couple of months.
It's interesting, Zach, you bring us back to Kevin McCarthy. He helped Marjorie Taylor Greene quite a bit. She was an ally. He put her on some important committees. To what extent, months later now, is she isolating herself inside the Republican conference?
Greene really did have something of a resurgence under the McCarthy speakership. Remember, she came into Congress as a conspiracy theorist and somebody who entertained the idea of QAnon and other sort of theories that didn't have any basis in evidence. But when McCarthy came to power with a very narrow majority, about as narrow as what Johnson has today, he really took her under his wing, and she had a lot more power in shaping legislation and the House schedule, including in pushing for the impeachment of President Joe Biden and some other cabinet officials. But with McCarthy on the outs and not even in the House anymore, she doesn't really have that ally at the top anymore. And so this has been her opportunity to try to force Johnson, and was successful for many months in keeping Ukraine aid off the floor, something she vehemently opposes. But certainly at this point, Johnson, with the support of the majority of Republicans and Democrats, is able to stay in that job and really sideline Greene from any of consideration here.